The closing bell has rung, but the business story continues. I'm Robert Tan, you're watching Business Brief. Let's get started. Iran vows to eliminate alleged abuses being committed at the Strait of Hormuz. Fuel prices are set to go up again next week. And the U.S. Embassy in Manila warns U.S. citizens following the deaths of 2 Americans during military operations against the New People's Army in Negros Occidental. U.S. President Donald Trump hints that negotiations between Washington and Tehran are ongoing. Trump said no one knows the status of the talks with Iran aside from himself and a handful of others. In a written message, Iran's Supreme Leader Mojtaba Khamenei said that a new chapter for the Gulf and Strait of Hormuz is taking shape. He added that Tehran would secure the Gulf region and eliminate what he called the enemy's abuses of the waterway. Iran has pledged to continue disrupting traffic through the strait as long as it is threatened. U.S. President Donald Trump signs an executive order expanding access to retirement plans for workers without employer-sponsored benefits. The initiative aims to broaden access to savings options similar to those offered to federal employees through the Thrift Savings Plan.
Beginning at the start of next year, every American will be able to go to TrumpIRA.gov and open a new low-cost IRA account. You'll then be able to access the same type of retirement accounts that federal employees enjoy through the Thrift Savings Plans, which are incredible.
A 2025 study shows nearly 50% of U.S. private sector workers, about 56 million people, do not receive retirement benefits from their jobs. California motorists are now paying $6 for a gallon of gasoline, the highest price in 2 years. The Iran war has brought the worst ever disruption to global oil supplies. It has triggered a spike in oil prices across the globe. With California's gubernatorial primary barely 1 month away, candidates are expected to debate on whether to eliminate the state's 61-cent per gallon gas tax, the highest in the U.S. Global oil prices edge higher as of 1:59 this afternoon, Manila time. West Texas Intermediate crude is just above $105 per barrel. Brent crude is holding above $111 per barrel. The conflict in the Middle East continues to drive volatility in global oil markets. Prospects for a 3-week ceasefire remain uncertain after Iran's supreme leader said the country will protect its nuclear and missile capabilities as a national asset. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump says gas prices will, quote, drop like a rock once the war ends amid pressures from elevated oil prices.
There's so much of it. It's all over the place, sitting all over the oceans of the world. And it'll go down. But what won't happen is if Iran had a nuclear weapon and used it, then the whole world is a different place. You're not going to have to pay a little bit more for gasoline. The oil will go down rapidly as soon as the war is over.
Thousands of workers rally in Argentina ahead of Labor Day, taking their protests to the streets of Buenos Aires. Union leaders blast the economic and labor policies of President Javier Milei, warning that workers' patience is running out.
Unfortunately, today in Argentina, the economic situation and the economic plan being carried out by Javier Milei's government are seriously affecting the situation of all workers, which deteriorates more year after year. People are very angry, very dissatisfied, and they will make that demand felt by taking to the streets of Buenos Aires and in the rest of the cities across all Argentine provinces.
In March, Milei pushes through a labor reform that changes the severance pay system, eases hiring rules, and extends the standard workday from 8 to up to 12 hours. Myanmar's former leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, is now under house arrest after more than 5 years in detention. State media reported that Nobel laureate will serve the remaining portion of her sentence at a designated residence. Suu Kyi, who has been held since the 2021 military coup, was previously sentenced to 33 years on multiple convictions. It was later reduced to 27 years with further amnesties and sentence reductions. Authorities say her reduced sentence was part of a wider prisoner amnesty, while questions remain about her condition and whereabouts. In other news, Prada clocked a 3% rise in first quarter revenue at constant rates, with the Versace still off the books for now. The newly acquired label is currently in makeover mode, being integrated and prepped for a relaunch. Prada pulled in 1.4 billion euros, with the Americas doing the heavy lifting amid softer demand in Europe and the Middle East. The brand said sales picked up pace in March and the momentum is stitching into the next quarter. King Charles III arrives in Bermuda following a 4-day state visit to the United States. This marks the King's first visit to Bermuda as a monarch. He makes a low-key arrival in Hamilton without Queen Camilla. A ceremonial welcome is set for today as the visit highlights the monarchy's engagement with overseas territories. Before heading to Bermuda, the royal couple caps their U.S. visit to a more relaxed public event in Virginia. Various groups mark Labor Day with protests. Alamin natin ang detalye mula kay Isaiah Mirafuentes ng Abante. Isaiah, kamusta na ang mga protesta?
Yes, Robert, kasabay ng mainit na panahon, binomba ng tubig ang mga nagprotesta malapit sa US Embassy. Paliwanag ng PNP, bago pang insidente ay binoto na ng mga ralista at sinakta ng mga pulis. Wala rin daw kasing permit ang mga nagprotesta. Bago yan, binahan ng relihista ang kahabaan ng Espanya Boulevard mula Welcome Rotonda at tumulak sila patungong Mindiola. Bit-bit ang kanilang panawagan na ibaba ang presyo ng bilihin at itaas ang sahod ng manggagawa. Para sa kanila, kakaiba ang protesta ngayong araw kumpara sa mga nagdaang taon. Subalit pagdating sa entrada ng Mindiola, 2 malaking container vans ang sumalubong sa kanila. May mga barbed wire din sa paligid at kumpol ng mga pulis. At tinanggap na lang nila ang kanilang kapalaran na hindi na sila makalalapit pa sa Mindiola ngayong araw. Kaya nagsagawa na lang sila ng programa sa kahabaan ng Nicanor Street, corner Recto Avenue. At nang mag-aalas 10 nga kanina, Robert, ay kusa na lang silang umalis. Ayon sa Manila Police District, bawal raw kasi talagang magprotesta sa Mindiola dahil ito raw ay hindi Freedom Park. Ayon sa Manila Police District, naging generally peaceful ang protesta ngayong Labor Day. Robert.
Thank you for that report, Isaiah Mirafuentes ng Abante. Meanwhile, the U.S. Embassy in Manila alerts U.S. citizens of recent operations by the armed forces of the Philippines against the New People's Army. The April 19 clash between the military and suspected NPA fighters in Negros Occidental led to several fatalities, including 2 Americans. The embassy advises Americans in the Philippines and around the world to abide by local laws and to avoid situations with elevated security risk. The NPA is designated as a foreign terrorist organization by the governments of the United States and the Philippines. Job fairs are being held in various parts of the country to mark Labor Day. Let's get the details from Joan Manalo. She joins us live from Pasay City. Go ahead, Joan.
Robert, as the country marks the 124th Labor Day celebration, SM Megamalls, together with the Department of Labor and Employment, held a nationwide job fair today. The event offered both local and overseas posts, with more than 2 million job openings from participating employers across 94 job fair sites nationwide. Here at the SMX Convention Center in Pasay City, 79 employers set up their own booths and activities for Filipinos seeking employment opportunities. According to DOLE spokesperson, Assistant Secretary Leonard Serrano, the top 5 industries featured in this year's job fair include manufacturing, wholesale and retail, construction, business process outsourcing, and accommodation and food services.
As of this morning, dumami na naman po ang ating vacancies. So it's now up to around 278,000. As of this morning yan. And we have almost 2,700 na participating employers. Ayan. Sa ating vacancies, let me read. Ito bago pa. Production operator and worker, store clerk, sales associate, customer service representative, yung call center agents, nandyan din ho, carpenter, mason, steelman, at meron rin po tayo service crew, line cook, and barista.
One of the major highlights of this year's job fair is also upskilling or helping workers develop their skills for long-term career growth. That is according to John San Agustin, Executive Vice President for Marketing of SM Supermalls. He added that SM is also working with the DICT, TESDA, and Asia Pacific College to help promote technical and digital skills development among Filipino job seekers. Beyond job hiring opportunities, various government agencies are also present here today at the Labor Day Job Fair in SMX Convention Center to provide one-stop government services, including legal consultations, resume printing, and employment facilitation services. And those are the latest. Back to you, Robert.
Thank you for that report, Joan Manalo. Fuel prices are set to go up again next week. Che Sulet filed this report.
After 3 consecutive weeks of rollbacks on fuel prices, motorists may have to brace themselves for a fresh round of oil price hikes next week. Based on full-week Nina Flat Singapore trading data, diesel prices could go up by around 4 pesos and 64 centavos per liter. Gasoline prices are also expected to increase by up to 3 pesos and 87 centavos per liter. And kerosene may see a smaller hike of around 42 centavos per liter. But these estimates do not yet include market premiums, which may lower or increase the adjustments. The final values will still depend on the official calculations of the Energy Department. The DOE also previously said that it has completed a draft of proposed amendments to the oil deregulation law and will submit this to Congress soon. Under the current law, government could not intervene on the pricing, importation, and exportation of petroleum products. Consumers and various sectors have urged lawmakers to revise the policy, as the prolonged Middle East conflict highlights the country's vulnerability to global market shocks. Facing another potential increase in fuel prices, the business sector, through the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, renews its call to the government: suspend the excise tax on gas and diesel.
Nung hinihingi ng executive yung emergency powers, one of the primary reasons was really to lift excise tax on these major fuel components, and diesel, I think, is one of the most critical ones. It needs to be addressed sooner than later.
PCCI Vice President for Trade and Industry Brian Ang says businesses remain extremely cautious amid the ongoing economic pressures. He adds that fuel prices and inflationary risks have hindered businesses in their plans for expansion in the long term. And with the weakening of the peso against the dollar, businesses are unable to sustain their profits.
Operating costs are going up. Demand is not going up because the take-home pay is the same, but eroded purchasing power. So very difficult times for all our businesses.
Ang also calls on the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas to implement controlled rate hikes so that the country's inflation rate can still be contained. Furthermore, the business sector stresses the need for targeted subsidies from the government, which will help industries and consumers cope with the impact of the Middle East conflict. Che Sulit, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
We'll take a short break. This is Business Brief. It's Labor Day, May 1st, and Filipino workers aren't celebrating. They're marching because for millions of families, the gap between what they earn and what they need has never been wider today. A straight conversation about wages, prices, and what Labor Day actually means in 2026. And joining us this afternoon is Sunny Africa, Executive Director of Ibon Foundation, an independent research organization that tracks poverty, labor, and inequality in the Philippines. He's here to tell us where Filipino workers actually stand. Sunny, good to have you on the show. Welcome back.
Good afternoon. Thanks for the invitation.
Happy Labor Day.
Happy Labor Day
Hope
to you,
everybody's
to everyone.
happy.
Apparently not, but
remains to be seen. Okay, Sai, let's start with this. The government says 49 million Filipinos are employed. Ibon says the economy is failing workers. How can both be true but still have a disconnect?
well, it's, I think, realizing that the official report of employment does not really reflect the real conditions right now. If you're employed but your wages are low, your earnings are low. If you're employed but you don't know if you'll still be employed in the coming month. And if you're employed but prices are rising up so much higher than your earnings, you can report large employment but actually still not get enough decent work. And I think that's the most important thing we have to sort of keep in mind whenever the labor force figures come out. They're reporting headline figures, but not reflecting the whole story about the labor situation.
A lot of uncertainty, and sometimes things get muddled up.
No, it's huge. Just take an example. In February, when the last labor force figures came out, I think the government was quite proud to report about 1.4 million additional employment to 49 million. Maybe they should have also reported private establishments, private wage work, fell by 1.1 million. Government work fell by about 300, 400,000. So these are presumably the most stable kinds of work. But in the span of a month, you lost 1.4, 1.5 million of what's meant to be stable work. I think that says a lot of the volatility of the kind of work we have. So we really can't just rely on the headline, so many employed, without actually drilling down into the quality of that work, the quality of the earnings of that work, and the security of that work.
So, Sonny, you've mentioned we only see the headlines, not really what happens in a deeper sense. But now, give us one honest headline, not a slogan, not a stat, for the state of the Filipino worker today, especially it's Labor Day. What is it?
Quite straightforwardly, workers are working harder, earning less, and bearing the burden of the shocks of economic crisis. And I think that is a failure, not just of the system in general, that's a failure of government.
Nothing, what does it say about the structure, the foundation of how we treat our everyday workers?
Well, I think the fact that you have so many workers right now not even earning the minimum wage, the fact that the minimum wage is actually a poverty wage, I don't think it's well known. The average minimum wage right now is about 20% less than the poverty threshold for a family of 5. That is crazy to set a minimum wage below the poverty wage, below the poverty threshold. So I think that says a lot because these are policy decisions. They don't fall from the sky. The wage is set by the government. The distribution of corporate or establishment earnings between workers and employers are a matter of choice. Apparently, the choice is to leave workers behind while to let a few benefit from the economy. And I think that is not a stable economy for us.
Now, you've made a different differentiation between minimum wage and living wage. Now, we've seen that workers are petitioning for 1,200 pesos a day right now on Labor Day itself. That's nearly double the current rate of around 600 plus. Now, but is 1,200 pesos a day enough? And on the flip side, is it realistic and doable?
On the question of is it enough, I think we should change that question a bit. The question is, do workers deserve that? I think a 1,200 national minimum wage, that actually is the workers catching up on literally decades of low wages. So I think if you look at it in that direction, I think it becomes much more, the argument for it becomes much stronger because it is just workers making up literally for decades of lost wages. Is it realistic, doable? I think with the right policy decisions, it is very realistic, it is very doable. Even in the current context of crisis, if we start from the realization workers need that wage to survive high prices, government can step in, support the smaller businesses who can't afford it. We have experience of wage subsidies during the COVID pandemic. I think that can be done to immediately sort of transition to a higher wage context where there's more purchasing power, there's more aggregate demand, and there's a real boost to economic growth.
You said it's doable, it's realistic, but having said that, why do you think it usually falls to death? It doesn't really happen. These things are not really discussed at a deeper level.
Well, I don't want to say it's just a failure of imagination, but there is a failure of imagination there. But I think more fundamentally, the problem is that the government is taking the easy way out. It is not easy to contest the hold-on profits of those bankrolling your electoral campaigns. It is not easy to say that workers should get primacy over the needs of a small group of employers or capitalists or business owners. So I think it's the easy way out for government not to assert the needs of workers. But I think that is a choice. The government can choose the not easy way out, but because it is the just and necessary way out. But on the other hand, there has to be sort of some adjustment even on the part of employers. I think most employers will know they have enough profits for a higher wage. And our constant experience is that when we attend regional wage boards, when we help workers with their wage demands, our constant problem is employers are not forthcoming about their financial conditions. So I think, sinasabi ng palagi, kung wala kang kinakatakutan, ilabas mo yung katotohanan. So for us, the fact that they're hiding a lot of the financial conditions, I think that's also basically hiding that they can afford higher wages.
Now, with the current petition of the 1,200 peso increase in place, the Department of Labor and Employment says a decision may come in July. 16 petitions filed. Why does it always take a crisis and a street march for government to consider what workers have been asking for years? And are you optimistic what will come out in their decision in July?
I always want to be optimistic.
It's always good to be optimistic.
Yeah, I think we need that to get up in the morning to get through our day. But having said that, I think the reality is that the government, and I think unfortunately a lot of employers, would rather workers suffered quietly, invisibly. It does take workers forming unions at the firm level. It does take workers going out to the streets to make it politically costly for the government to ignore wage demands. So I think the reason these demands come around during times of crises, because this is when workers say, it's too much. It's bad enough during normal times. It's even worse during crisis times.
Double down.
Yeah.
Now, Sonny, you projected inflation could hit 6 to 7% by year end. But if wages stay flat, how many more Filipinos fall into poverty?
The arithmetic tells us we will see at least 1 to 2 million Filipino families fall into poverty in the coming months.
That's big?
It's a straightforward problem. The bottom line is you have 14 million poor Filipino families. You have about 7 million lower middle class families who are on the edge of poverty. An increase of inflation to 5-6% is literally 500 to maybe 600 pesos taken away from them. For those on the margin, the arithmetic will say that is enough to push them underneath the poverty threshold.
Are we feeling government programs, subsidies right now? How much of that is being felt?
It's not really being felt at an aggregate level, because when the government declared the national energy emergency, they also said this will be implemented within current appropriations. That's a problem, because if you have 14 million poor Filipino families, if you have a new crisis coming in, burdening them with higher prices, you cannot rely on a budget passed in 2025 for 2026. You need new and additional funds. So I think the reason that so few transport workers are being helped, about 1.2 million so far out of 2.2 million, and the reason the government is not going to be extending any more oil crisis response to the 14, 15 million other poor and vulnerable families is because they've tied their hands, they've self-limited, we are only going to work within current appropriations. And it's not enough.
Some would argue that it's being done on a piecemeal basis. How would you, what are your thoughts on that?
It is very piecemeal because there is no new and additional funding for the oil shock response. I mean, we've been seeing the news reports about the government claiming we're mobilizing 20, 30 billion pesos. We're mobilizing 100, 120 billion pesos. But the real question is this new and additional funds? Right now, all the support for transport workers is coming from the IX program of DSWD, which would have been spent anyway. So basically, you're giving the transport workers, but taking away from the other beneficiaries who would have gotten that anyway. And I think if that pattern continues, that the government will not mobilize new and additional funding for a very new and additional crisis, in the end, you will have actually more Filipinos left behind than actually Filipinos help.
Now, having said that, the 2026 budget has been running for 4 months.
Yeah.
Where are Filipinos actually feeling it or maybe not feeling it? What are the sentiments on the ground when you talk to the people?
Well, I think the budget should be spent. The whole point of the budget is to lift public welfare when
And
it
to
needs
boost
to be
economy,
needed,
yes.
and boost the economy. But right now, if we're not seeing budgets being spent on more food support, more transport support, more public services to lower the lower costs of living for Filipinos, then I would argue Filipinos are not feeling that budget. And again, we have to keep going back. If the government will be implementing a 2026 budget based on what it passed in 2025 before the crisis, that is ignoring there's a crisis, that is mobilizing a budget that is much too small for the magnitude of the problem at hand. And I think any sort of press releases that claim so many 100,000 help, so many 100,000 being given, 5,000 pesos, clearly they're not reaching out to everyone in need. They're not giving everyone in need what they need. And actually, they've tied their hands to expand programs to the scale of the problem.
But do you think the government is now being at least more cautious with the issues surrounding the flood control scandal to ensure that no more leakages happen when taxes are collected, when all the different funds are being collected by the government and being spent? What are your thoughts on that?
It seems that way. We heard about the slowdown in infrastructure spending that started last year. I think that cuts to the heart of the problem. The reason there's so much conservatism in spending infrastructure now was because our past infrastructure programs were corruption and pork barrel driven. So with the specter now of more accountability, I think a lot of the politicians and their contractors are rolling back just to make sure they don't leave a nasty audit trail.
And that's in just in one agency. We haven't even looked at the other agencies if there are any leakages.
Exactly. I think that the Department of Social Welfare and Development, it sounds so beautiful, social welfare, development, helping poor Filipinos, but there are huge cash funds going through the DSWD. A lot of it is very politicized. A lot of it, unfortunately, is influenced by politicians. I think we should sort of drill down to that as well.
Now, so what's one thing government can do now, right now, not after the midterms for immediate workers' relief? Just one. What do you think would be a very substantial action that they can do?
It's a super loaded question because it's Labor Day, but I think a meaningful wage hike with targeted subsidies to help smaller businesses, I think that will help literally millions of workers and their families. That will shift the balance of just distribution of profits towards workers. And I think that will actually boost aggregate demand. That will boost economic growth.
Some would argue that it shouldn't just be targeted subsidies, but there should be livelihood attached to that so that the money is spent well, used well, and that maybe it could be used for the family so they could actually stand up on their own in the future and just not just keep on getting subsidies.
In a time of crisis, you need subsidies to get by because livelihoods take time to get off the ground. So we do argue that right now it is a time of crisis, so you do need subsidies as immediate relief. But having said that, of course, it is incumbent on the government to look further. Families will always look to the next meal. The government lasts for decades, centuries. The government can look further, build Filipino industry, create jobs at home, increase productivity, increase wages, increase the welfare of everyone. But it's up to the government to look beyond the short-term profits from a service economy.
And now focusing on Labor Day, workers have marched to Mendiola for decades. What has actually changed across the last 10 Labor Days? Has anything changed?
Okay, I want to be so optimistic, but things have changed for the worse. Precarity of work has worsened. We've seen much worse contractualization. We've seen an expansion of the gig economy. We've seen workers having less control over their lives, less control over their work. So I think it's actually a heroic effort right now for so many unions, despite the contractualization, despite the gig economy, despite informalization. It's a heroic effort to actually still maintain unions. So I think that is, for me, something to hold on to. Workers can still come out in the streets. Workers can still get together in the workplace to demand, their fair share of the profits.
Any lessons learned from the past so you do things differently, like for your organization in terms of how you have discussions with with the people in your organization and people on the ground and the government and the private sector? What has changed? What needs to change in terms of better communication with all the stakeholders?
Well, I think the biggest lesson is let's find our commonalities and minimize our differences. In all honesty, I think a lot of workers and a lot of smaller businesses have the same interest to combat the monopolization of the economy, to combat the hold of oligarchies and the domination of economic life. So I think that if more workers and more small businesses come together, find that they have a common stake in building a strong domestic economy where incentives and subsidies go to small Filipino enterprises to build Filipino industries, I think that is a basis of unity for moving forward. But if we have a government that is so inclined to bend over backwards for foreign investors, that's so inclined to bend over backwards to domestic monopolies, I think that sort of chokes the economy and sort of brings us in the wrong direction.
So look inward first.
Look inward, but more than that, look to our strengths. We have a strong labor force.
Yeah.
We do have fledgling businesses right now that, given the right government support and subsidies and technology support and even protections, can actually prosper in the decades to come.
Now, marchers today are linking the Middle East conflict to the local wage crisis. What's the connection? Make that connection. How does a war abroad end up on a Filipino worker's dinner table?
Well, if there's one thing I think that we're hoping people realize after this whole West Asia brouhaha comes about, is that things that happen abroad have direct influence on us. So right now, when the US attacked Iran and Iran retaliated and threw the geopolitical mix in the West Asia into turmoil, it raised oil prices. It raised first transport costs, the cost of living the cost of transport for transport producers, for drivers, and in the end, is feeding into higher food prices. So I think oil prices, to our own long-term vulnerabilities, transmitted through the oil firms who are unfortunately getting a free hand right now to price things, that's making things expensive for every Filipino.
Because I think we're going to see another rate hike after having
yeah. But the thing is,
a decrease in prices.
again, for us, we still have to sort of
Yeah.
look at the windfall profits the oil firms made in the first month of the crisis. I mean,
And the VAT collected from that.
well, yeah, and the VAT. But the thing is, the biggest problem right now is our oil spot markets are so dependent on the
Yes.
futures markets.
True.
And people didn't know how things would play out in the Middle East. The first month was the most uncertain. It also had the biggest price spikes. So you had that big gap between buying cheap and selling really, really high. I haven't heard any explanation yet from DOE how to handle the windfall profits, about 47 billion pesos that oil firms made just in the first month.
Now, Sonny, what can you say about the millions of workers who have no job security, no benefits, no tenure? The law says they're protected, but reality says otherwise. Now, who is responsible and who is allowing it to continue? Who should we look at? Is it the private sector? Is it the government? Is it the labor groups? What should we look at?
I think, of course, at the firm level, it would be nice if we had enlightened employers who treat their workers well, who share the benefits of the business with their workers.
Well, there are.
No, there definitely are. But the thing is, in the bell curve of businesses, there are very few actually at that end of the spectrum with that sort of sense of collective ownership about the business. Unfortunately, most businesses treat workers as commodities. Too many businesses think that the cheaper workers are, the better our profits are. In that regard, the government has to step in. So I think the government has to mediate between workers and the employers to make sure that those in need have a voice and actually have the power to assert, using the law, their relative leverage over their employers to get a better deal.
Now, when your organization sits down and you talk among yourselves, basically based on your advocacy, what does a genuine pro-worker economy look like? And how far are we from it? Or is it reachable?
No, it's definitely reachable. Everything about the economy is touched by the hand of man. All policies are policies made by people. If the government so chooses, it can craft an economy that gives fair wages. It can craft an economy that, while giving fair wages, gives fair profits to employers. At the same time, it actually should be providing public services to lower the cost of living for workers. And I think if those are done, we can have a much better economy. And again, I think a much more stable economy because people are all better off.
Now, your organization has been here for a long time. You've seen everything on the ground, the sentiments of the labor workers. You've always also seen on the other side, also, of course, what the small companies are experiencing on both sides, your discussions with government, with private sector, and the labor groups. But has your strategy changed from the past in terms of the discussions you have, the kind of strategies, the approach you have when you discuss with government, with private sector, for the plight of the for the plight of the workers?
Well, for Ibon in particular, we've always relied on the workers to bring their own struggles forward. I mean, Ibon will ever just have a supplementary role. I think if there's one big shift in strategies, it's more on the worker side because a lot of workers have had to deal with the flexibilization of work, have had to deal with the difficulty of organizing unions, they've had to deal with red tagging and political repression. So for Ibon, in a lot of ways, we're insulated from that. But for us, we make it as easy as possible for workers to give them the information how to analyze their financial statements, how to actually make a case for their wage demands, and actually, most importantly, a big shift for us, the doability of the demands. A lot of employers always say, we can't afford a wage hike, our businesses will fall. We have enough close friends among enlightened employers who've shared the financial statements across many industries. Clearly, employers can give much more than they are saying. And I think that is a point of information we give to workers for them to bring to their struggles.
Have complaints or sentiments changed over the past and what you see now? Or is it still the same kind of complaints that you're hearing and the same kind of maybe non-action that you're seeing?
It's unfortunately the same thing. When times are good, employers say we can't afford because we can't afford to give wage hikes because it will interrupt our trajectory. When times are bad, they say we can't give a wage hike because things are going to get even worse. We're going to shut down. For us, as long as the facts are there, lay it on the ground for both parties. You realize it is possible to give higher wages with a bit more enlightenment on the part of employers.
And finally, Sunny, when the day ends, when workers go home to the same wages, the same prices, the same uncertainty, Sunny, what has to happen for Labor Day to finally become a celebration and not a protest?
Well, it's a protest because workers have to fight for it. It's a protest because workers are not given fair wages, just treatment, their rights are being trampled on. So for us, the only way to transition from a Labor Day of protest and fighting for something to celebrating something is when workers achieve that. When growth is something shared by everyone instead of extracted from workers through their cheap labor, when the economy is just and fair, I think at that moment we will all realize work should be celebrated, work drives the economy, work brings us all forward. But until that point, we have to keep protesting because the economy has to be made fairer. It won't fall from the sky. Workers have to push in a democratic way for that more democratic economy.
With the same kind of optimism that you always have.
I think we should have that. We're not going to wake up in the morning or get anywhere with our lives if we're
Okay, on that note, Sunny, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. Always great to hear your insights and, of course, the advocacy of your organization for labor workers and their rights. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll take a short break. This is Business Brief. Teachers Party List representative Antonio Tino said he has no knowledge of the rumored headcount linked to House Majority Leader Sandro Marcos. Speaking on Bilyonaryo News Channel's Political Nightly, the lawmakers said that bribery occurring when lobbying in politics are nothing new, but stop short of identifying anyone in particular. There are reports that the president's son is allegedly calling House lawmakers to offer incentives in exchange for supporting the impeachment against Vice President Sara Duterte.
Well, every time may impeachment, no, whether ngayon under the current administration or in previous administration, kahit nung panahon ni Duterte, nung panahon ni Pinoy, laging may ganyang sinasabi. No?
So hindi na bago yung ganyang issue na sinasabing may bayaran para doon sa boto, para bumoto. Ano na yan, parang lumang tugtugin, kumbaga.
Lumang tugtugin. At usually, siyempre, yan ang sasabihin ng kampong, opisyal na in-impeach, yung kampo ng opisyal na in-impeach, para siraan yung proseso. Hindi natin sinasabing hindi nangyayari yun. Talagang in the past, nakikita rin naman, meron talagang gano'n. Diba?
So meron talagang gano'n?
Hindi naman tayo nagmamaang-maangan. Realidad din yan sa Kongreso. Diba? Pero talagang realidad yan sa lahat ng administrasyon ginagawa yan.
The camp of Attorney Mans Carpio insists the House Justice Committee had no authority to release his bank records as well as those of his wife, Vice President Sara Duterte. This came after the Anti-Money Laundering Council flagged 6.7 billion pesos worth of the couple's bank transactions during the panel's third impeachment hearing. On BNC's On Point, Carpio spokesperson Attorney Neil Abayan said that once their camp fully establishes a supposed conspiracy among those involved, more individuals could face complaints.
Yung nag-release po kasi ng AMLAC records, well, first alleged AMLAC records because we have not received an official copy ng AMLAC records as of today. And even, prior to the hearing, up to date, wala pa po. So since it's AMLAC, then AMLAC is under BSP, sila yung finailan. And then for the very specific Congress people, sila po kasi yung nag-motion for the issuance of subpoena, second the motion. Pero if you look at the complaint po, there's also yung John and Jane Doe's. So once we fully establish conspiracy between all of them, then other individuals could also still be held liable, not named currently.
A former president of the Integrated Bar of the Philippines says the Supreme Court's clarification of forthwith carries little weight in the impeachment case against Vice President Sara Duterte. This comes after the High Court clarified that the term forthwith in the Constitution in relation to impeachment cases means, quote, within a reasonable time, which may be longer or shorter depending on the circumstances of each case. On BNC's agenda, Domingo Cayosa noted that the ruling stemmed from a moot petition and does not bind the Senate, which he said retains full control over when and how to proceed.
So, at the end of the day, the reality is it will be the Senate Impeachment Court that will decide the schedule, how soon and when they will start and how they will proceed with the trial. So, hindi rin masyadong nakakatulong itong definition na ito ng Supreme Court that it comes very late in the day and it doesn't change the language of the Constitution. Forthwith pa rin ang nakalagay, nakasulat sa Constitution, and no amount of Supreme Court obiter or any opinion will change the word forthwith at kung anong ibig sabihin yan in ordinary language.
Cayosa also welcomed Senate President Vicente Soto's statement that the chamber could convene as an impeachment court as soon as the day after the articles of impeachment are transmitted by the House of Representatives. Ramil Madriaga, the self-proclaimed bagman of Vice President Sara Duterte, is a professional scammer. That's according to former Ilocos Sur Governor Chavit Singson. On BNC's The Spoke, Singson said he once filed a case against Madriaga for allegedly asking for money. To recall, Madriaga testified in the House impeachment hearing against the vice president. Among his allegations are that drug dealers and pogo operators funded the vice president's campaign and that there was an alleged term-sharing agreement between the Marcos and Duterte camps.
Alam mo yung mga testigo nila against Sarah, yung sa Congress? Kinasuhan ko rin eh. Yung Madriaga, professional scammer yun. May kaso, ang daming kaso. Ako mismo, nag-file na sa court, ini-scam ako, pinuntahan ako sa bahay, nakipagkaibigan, tapos humingi sila ng pera dahil may video sila si President Noynoy na nagde-deliver to mga PSG to. Puro bang magnanakaw ang kasama. Nakarmas pa sila. So, hinuli ko lahat. Dinamanda ko. Scammer yun. Yun ang testigo nila. Hindi lang sila makapili.
Turkish protesters cry foul over Israel's seizure of aid ships on their way to Gaza. Flotilla organizers said the incident happened in international waters near Greece. Turkey said the interception is a clear violation of international law. It added that the incident also jeopardized navigational safety. Palestinians and international aid bodies say supplies reaching Gaza are still insufficient. The Bilyonaryo News Channel unveils its first ever Gen Z-centered program through unpopular opinion. At the forefront, hosts Janina Vela and Sachiko Gamboa stress the importance of giving young voices a platform to be heard.
The words that I hear all the time are that we're too opinionated. And that, I wouldn't say that's a misconception, actually, because...
It's a truth.
So what if I am?
Oh, yeah, that's true.
You know, in a nice smile, so what if I am opinionated? So what if I do have a lot to say about what's going on in the country? This is going to be the country and the world that my children are going to be born in, and why shouldn't I care about it now, you know? I think it's a misconception that that's a bad thing. But I think it...
Yeah, kasi inisip niya, palasagot to, masyadong dami sinasabi.
Ang ingay-ingay mo, nakikisaw-saw ka lang. But I say, no, we have a say in the way that the world works because we're the ones who are going to inherit it.
Beyond the youth-focused show, Sachiko Gamboa also joins Business 360, bringing her insight on economy and finance built on her experience on Wall Street.
I'll be doing like Monday markets on Business 360, where we'll analyze the charts, the markets, the whole index. And then also on Fridays, I'll be talking a little bit more about like the Gen Z aspect of business. So we get to connect unpopular opinion and Business 360 together, which is really nice. And I think that's a really good way for us Gen Zs and even the youth to learn more about topics that we should be talking about.
Starting May 4 from 5 to 5:30 p.m., Gen Z takes center stage. Through unpopular opinion, young voices are given the space to spark conversations and help shape public perspective. Elon Musk admits that he did not read the fine print regarding OpenAI's status as a for-profit company. This came after Musk was questioned during a tense cross-examination by OpenAI's lawyers over whether he read a term sheet given to him by co-founder Sam Altman on August 31, 2017. The case is linked to the company's shift from a non-profit model to a for-profit structure overseen by a non-profit entity. Musk says he was aware of discussions about turning the company into a for-profit entity, but claims Altman assured him it would remain a non-profit. Musk has filed a lawsuit against OpenAI. He alleges that the company, CEO Altman and President Greg Brockman secured his $38 million in donations and personal support. This was done by promising to build a nonprofit focused on safe artificial intelligence development. He claims they later shifted to a for-profit model to enrich themselves. BYD's premium electric vehicle brand Denza is making a bigger play for the Philippine luxury car market. After entering the country earlier this year, Denza is expanding its local lineup with new plug-in hybrid SUVs. Our mobility correspondent G. Baroga gives us a front seat view.
Denza is continuing to build its presence in the country's growing electric vehicle market. The brand arrived in the Philippines in the first quarter and says it's committed to offering more sustainable mobility options for Filipinos, especially as fuel prices remain unpredictable.
With both Denza and BYD, I believe we can already cater to as many as the customers possible. We are providing them not only the cars, but we are providing them the solutions to address their concerns. That is what we always want to do.
who notes that while fuel prices may stabilize eventually, things won't go back to normal right away. But is hopeful that more people will gradually see the value of new energy vehicles. After launching its luxury MPV B9, Denza is now expanding into the luxury SUV segment. The B5 and B8 plug-in hybrid EVs are now available in the local market. For the company, this marks an important step in reaching more Filipino customers.
For Denza, we always want to build the brand first. The brand is much more than the selling. Yeah, so this is our biggest, principle. We are not just a selling car. We really want to help people to understand a more sustainable way to live and for the future generations.
Denza is currently in 14 Asia-Pacific countries and regions. In the Philippines, it has 4 dealerships: Alabang, Makati, Green Hills, and Cebu. For BNC Mobility, G. Baroga.
Shares in Asia gains, although most regional markets are closed for the May Day holiday. Among Asian markets, ASX 200 rises 0.7%. In currency trading, the US dollar mostly depreciates against major Asian currencies. In commodities, gold drops while oil prices move higher. In cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin adds 0.8%, while Ethereum gains almost. The U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission approves a proposal by NASDAQ for an option trading venue. According to a regulatory order, this will allow the listing and trading of a new class of stock market prediction instruments linked to a major index. Several firms are increasingly looking to enter the prediction market space. This would allow users to bet on the outcomes of real-world events as the sector gains legitimacy and opens new revenue streams and market insights. The New York-based exchange operator's products are cash-settled contracts that pay a fixed amount at expiration, depending on whether the index finishes above or below a set level. Filipino billionaires saw a slight increase in their combined wealth in April. According to Forbes, the combined net worth of 14 Filipinos on the billionaires list reached $37.3 billion last month. This is higher compared to $37 billion recorded in March. The increase was driven by gains in the wealth of Enrique Razon Jr., which rose to more than $15 billion, and Manny Villar, whose net worth increased to over $2 billion. Bilyonaryo News Channel is sharpening its business coverage with a stronger lineup. Starting Monday, May 4, Business 360 will be led by Apa Ongpin, former executive director of the Makati Business Club, one of the country's most influential business groups. Ongpin brings decades of media experience, having worked as anchor, host, reporter, director, and producer. Catch him on the anchor chair again weekdays 4 to 5 in the afternoon. We will also bring in our new business and markets reporter, former Morgan Stanley investment banking analyst, and Ivy League graduate Sachiko Gamboa. She will be giving us her in-depth analysis of the stock market, both here and in Wall Street, only on Business 360. Follow the Money also returns stronger and sharper, anchored by yours truly. The show brings business and finance closer to everyday life. We go in-depth on saving and investing, consumer trends, spending habits, and the money choices Filipinos face daily. Catch me on Follow the Money weekdays 10 to 10:30 a.m. And that's a wrap for today's Business Brief. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel. And that's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Robert San. Keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.